analyzing the forgotten recordings of real encounters. You are watching Bodycam Story Vault. Data loaded.
Excuse me, can I help you with something?
Ma'am, we're going to need to see some identification, proof of citizenship.
What? Do you even know who I am?
You fit the description of someone we're looking for. That's all I care about.
I was born in Detroit. I've sat on the federal bench for 14 years.
All right, that's enough. We're detaining you until we can verify your status. Turn around.
14 years on the federal bench. Appointed by the President. Unanimously confirmed by the Senate. The Honorable Diane Elizabeth Whitmore had presided over civil rights cases, immigration appeals, and criminal trials in the same courthouse she was walking toward when IC Agent Ryan Gallagher stepped into her path and demanded proof of citizenship. She was 50 feet from the entrance of the Theodore Levin United States Courthouse, her workplace, her courtroom, her jurisdiction. Her judicial robe was in her tote bag. Her 9 a.m. hearing was 38 minutes away. Her family had been in Michigan for 5 generations, since her great-great-grandfather escaped slavery on the Underground Railroad and settled in Detroit in 1859. None of it mattered to an agent who saw a black woman in professional attire and decided that required investigation. You fit the description of someone we're looking for. The description was black. The someone was a federal judge. The looking was about to cost Agent Gallagher everything. $10 million. Career destroyed. And a judge who returned to her bench to do what she had done for 14 years. Deliver justice to those who thought they were above it. The Theodore Levin United States Courthouse rose above Lafayette Boulevard in downtown Detroit, a 13-story federal building housing the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan. Grand columns. American flags. The architecture of institutional authority. Judge Whitmore had walked through its doors nearly every workday for 14 years. The security officers knew her by name. The clerks knew her schedule. The other judges knew her reputation. Fair, thorough, the kind of jurist whose opinions were cited by appellate courts and studied by law students. This Tuesday morning, she carried her usual tote bag, judicial robe folded inside, case files for the day's docket, reading glasses, the thermos of tea her husband had pressed into her hands as she left their Palmer Woods home. 61 years old. Harvard Law School, 1989. Law clerk to Justice Thurgood Marshall, the last class of clerks before his retirement. Civil rights attorney in Detroit for 15 years before her appointment to the bench. Her great-great-grandfather, Samuel Whitmore, had arrived in Detroit in 1859, escaped from a Virginia plantation, guided north on the Underground Railroad, welcomed by the city's free black community. 5 generations later, his great-great-granddaughter presided over the same federal laws that had once deemed him property. The irony was never lost on her. The history was always present. This morning's docket included an immigration case, asylum seeker from Guatemala, fleeing gang violence, seeking protection under laws that Judge Whitmore had interpreted dozens of times. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. She liked to arrive by 8:30, review her notes, center herself before taking the bench. She was 50 feet from the courthouse entrance when she noticed the 2 agents. Olive tactical vests, tan cargo pants, black boots, ICE insignia visible on their shoulders. They stood near the sidewalk, scanning morning foot traffic with the particular attention of officers looking for targets. Their eyes found her. Agent Ryan Gallagher changed direction. His partner followed, positioning himself at an angle that would provide a second body cam perspective on everything that followed. Judge Whitmore had seen this dynamic before. Not as a target, as a jurist. She had presided over civil rights cases where officers approached civilians with exactly this posture. She had reviewed body cam footage showing exactly this body language. She knew what was coming before the first word was spoken. "Ma'am, I need you to stop." She stopped. Not from compliance with authority, from the calculated decision of a woman who had spent decades understanding how power worked and how to document its abuse. "Good morning, officer. Is there something I can help you with?" Gallagher positioned himself directly in her path. Between her and the courthouse. Between her and her courtroom. "We're conducting enforcement operations. I need to see some identification. Proof of citizenship." The words landed on Lafayette Boulevard, 50 feet from the federal courthouse, 38 minutes before the Honorable Diane Elizabeth Whitmore was scheduled to take the bench. Proof of citizenship. Judge Whitmore repeated the words with the precise diction she used when reading charges to defendants. "On what basis?" "We've received reports of unauthorized individuals in this area." Unauthorized individuals. Near a federal courthouse, where federal employees arrive every morning. Ma'am, I need to see identification. I'm a federal judge. I work in that building. She pointed to the courthouse behind him. My courtroom is on the 7th floor. I have a hearing at 9 o'clock. Gallagher's expression didn't change. His partner's body cam, Axon Body 2, timestamp 8 hours 22 minutes and 17 seconds, captured his posture. Dismissive. Certain. That's what everyone says. Everyone says they're federal judges. Everyone has a story about why they belong somewhere. This isn't a story. This is my workplace. I've walked through those doors nearly every day for 14 years. I'm going to need to see some documentation. Judge Whitmore looked at the agent with an expression that had silenced unprepared attorneys and chastened arrogant witnesses for over a decade. What description do I fit? Excuse me. You said you're looking for someone. You implied I match a description. What description? That's operational information. There is no description, is there? You saw a black woman in professional attire walking toward a federal building, and you decided that required investigation. Gallagher's face tightened. The body cam captured the reaction, the first sign that this encounter wasn't following his expectations. Ma'am, you fit the description of someone we're looking for. That's all I can tell you. I fit the description of a federal judge walking to her courtroom. That's what I am. That's where I'm going. I need to verify that. Then verify it. Call the courthouse. Call the U.S. Marshals. Call anyone you want. My name is Diane Whitmore. I'm a United States District Judge. I was appointed by President Clinton in 2010 and unanimously confirmed by the Senate. She opened her tote bag slowly, deliberately, the movement of someone who understood how officers interpreted sudden gestures. I'm going to show you something that should end this conversation. Keep your hands where I can see them. My hands are visible. I'm reaching into my bag to show you my judicial credentials. She produced the credential case, leather, embossed with the seal of the United States courts. Inside, her judicial identification, her photograph, her name, her title, the Honorable Diane Elizabeth Whitmore, United States District Judge, Eastern District of Michigan. Gallagher examined it with the same theatrical suspicion that had marked every unlawful stop in Judge Whitmore's experience as a jurist. This could be fake. It's not fake. It's issued by the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. Anyone can buy these online. No one can buy working judicial credentials with a federal court seal. That's a crime, one I've sentenced people for. How do I know you're who this says you are? Because I'm telling you. Because I'm standing 50 feet from the courthouse where I work. Because I can produce witnesses who know me, records that document my employment, and a judicial robe in this bag. She gestured to the tote bag. My robe is right here. I wear it every day. I was on my way to put it on. Gallagher's partner spoke for the first time, quietly, directed at his colleague. Ryan, maybe we should call the courthouse. We'll verify at the field office. She says she's a judge. She says a lot of things. Judge Whitmore looked at the partner, at his body cam, at the doubt visible in his posture. Your partner is about to make a decision that will end both of your careers. I'm giving you the opportunity to stop it. Judge Whitmore reached into her tote bag again, the same deliberate movement, the same visible hands. I'm going to show you my judicial robe, the robe I wear on the bench, the robe that identifies me as a federal judge. She withdrew the black fabric, unfolded it partially, the distinctive collar, the flowing material, the garment that symbolized judicial authority in every federal courtroom in America. This is what I wear when I preside over cases. Immigration cases, among others. The same type of cases your agency claims to enforce. Gallagher glanced at the robe. His expression shifted, not to recognition, but to deeper suspicion. Anyone can buy a robe online. Costume shops sell them. Costume shops don't sell authentic federal judicial robes with custom tailoring and court identification numbers sewn into the collar. She turned the collar to show the tag, the numbers, the court designation. This robe was fitted for me 14 years ago. It has been repaired twice by the same tailor in Birmingham. The records are on file with the court administrator. I don't have access to court administrator records. Then call someone who does. I'm offering you verification. Take it. I verify people at the field office, not on the street. You're verifying a federal judge. The rules are different. The rules are the same for everyone. Judge Whitmore's voice dropped to the temperature she used when issuing contempt warnings. I am a United States District Judge. I have Article 3 authority granted by the Constitution. I am walking to my workplace to fulfill my constitutional duties. You are interfering with those duties. Ma'am, I am not ma'am. I am Your Honor. That is how you address a federal judge. I'm not in your courtroom. You're in my jurisdiction. Every federal building, every federal sidewalk, every piece of federal property in the Eastern District of Michigan falls under my authority. You are standing in it right now. Gallagher's face flushed. The bodycam captured it, the particular shade of someone whose power was being challenged by someone who had more. I don't answer to state judges. I'm not a state judge. I'm a federal judge, appointed for life, confirmed by the Senate, superior to your authority in every legal sense. ICE doesn't answer to the courts. Everyone answers to the courts. That's how the Constitution works. That's what I've spent 14 years teaching people who forgot it. She folded the robe carefully, placed it back in the bag, looked at Gallagher with the assessment she used when determining whether a defendant truly understood the gravity of their situation. I am giving you one final opportunity. Call your supervisor. Verify my credentials. Let me proceed to my courtroom. This can end with a minor report and no consequences. Or you continue down this path, and I become the plaintiff in a civil rights case that I could have presided over myself. Is that a threat? It's a statement of legal fact. I've ruled on dozens of cases exactly like this one. I know how they end. You should too. Gallagher reached for his handcuffs. You're being detained until we can verify your status. You're making a career-ending mistake. That's what everyone says. I'm not everyone. And in approximately 15 minutes, you're going to understand exactly why. The handcuffs emerged from his belt. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Judge Whitmore looked at the courthouse behind him. 50 feet away. 34 minutes until her hearing. The building where she had dispensed justice for 14 years. For the record, I am the Honorable Diane Elizabeth Whitmore, United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Michigan. I am being detained without probable cause by ICE agents who have refused to verify my credentials. She turned. History will remember this moment. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists. The metal was cold against skin that had never worn restraints. 14 years on the bench. 30 years in the law. A career built on the principle that the system worked, that justice prevailed, that authority came with accountability. Now she stood in handcuffs on the sidewalk of Lafayette Boulevard, 50 feet from her own courthouse, her judicial robe in a bag at her feet. This is being recorded by your bodycam, your partner's bodycam, the courthouse security cameras, and multiple cell phones. She looked at the growing crowd of morning commuters who had stopped to watch. Several had phones raised. The particular horror of public humiliation mixed with the particular power of public documentation. Everyone is watching you handcuff a federal judge. You claim to be a federal judge. I am a federal judge, and within the hour, you're going to understand exactly what that means. Gallagher grabbed her arm, the grip of someone moving a suspect toward transport. Let's go. Where? Field office. Processing. You're going to process a federal judge? I'm going to verify your identity. You could verify my identity by walking 50 feet and asking anyone in that building. That's not protocol. Your protocol is about to become a federal investigation. The crowd had grown to 30 people. Courthouse employees arriving for work. Attorneys heading to hearings. Citizens who had never seen a woman in professional attire handcuffed on a public sidewalk. That's Judge Whitmore. A voice from the crowd. A young woman in a blazer, phone raised. She's a federal judge. What are you doing? Ma'am, step back. I'm a clerk in her chambers. That's Judge Whitmore. She has a hearing in 30 minutes. More voices joined. That's definitely Judge Whitmore. I had a case in front of her last month. What's happening? Why is she in handcuffs? Someone call the marshals. Gallagher's partner had retreated slightly, the posture of someone recognizing catastrophe while his colleague remained oblivious. Ryan, maybe we should. We're transporting her for processing. People are saying she's really a judge. People say a lot of things. Judge Whitmore's voice cut through the noise. Calm. Controlled. The same voice that had delivered verdicts and sentences for 14 years. My law clerk just identified me. An attorney who appeared in my courtroom identified me. The evidence is mounting. Every second you continue this unlawful detention, the consequences increase. We'll sort it out at the field office. You'll sort it out here. Because inapproximately, she checked her watch, calculating. 10 minutes. The United States Marshal Service is going to arrive. They protect federal judges. It's their primary mission. And when they find me in your handcuffs, on this sidewalk, you're going to wish you had listened. Gallagher tightened his grip on her arm. Move. I'm not resisting. I'm complying under duress with an unlawful detention. I want that statement on the record. They began walking toward the ICE vehicle parked at the corner. A white Dodge Durango with federal plates. Behind them, the crowd had produced a half-dozen phones. The young law clerk was already calling someone, speaking rapidly, urgently. This is Emily Thornton. I'm Judge Whitmore's clerk. She's being detained outside the courthouse by ICE agents. I need you to contact the marshals immediately. The call went to the chief judge's chambers. Within 60 seconds, it had been routed to the U.S. Marshals Service Command. Within 3 minutes, vehicles were dispatched. Judge Whitmore walked toward the Durango with the dignity that 30 years in the law had taught her. She had survived worse than handcuffs. She had faced down worse than arrogant officers. But this was different. This was her courthouse, her jurisdiction, her sidewalk, and she was being treated like a criminal for walking to work. The United States Marshals Service had protected federal judges since 1789. It was their oldest and most sacred duty, ensuring that the men and women who administered justice could do so without fear. When the call came from the chief judge's chambers, Deputy Marshal Sandra Reyes responded with the urgency that threats to the judiciary demanded. Say that again. Judge Whitmore has been detained by ICE agents outside the courthouse. She's in handcuffs on Lafayette Boulevard. Judge Whitmore. Diane Whitmore. 7th floor. Correct. In handcuffs. That's what the clerk says. She witnessed it happening. Reyes was already moving. 2 other deputies fell in behind her, the automatic response of officers trained to protect the federal bench. How long ago? 3 minutes. They're walking her toward a vehicle. They're not transporting her anywhere. The marshal's vehicle covered the distance from the courthouse motor pool to Lafayette Boulevard in under 4 minutes. Reyes was out before it fully stopped. The scene was worse than reported. A federal judge in handcuffs. 2 ICE agents attempting to load her into a Durango. A crowd of witnesses with phones raised. The chaos of an impossible situation unfolding in real time. Stop. Reyes' voice carried the authority of federal law enforcement at its most fundamental level. Step away from that woman. Gallagher turned. He saw the marshal's uniforms. The badges. The particular intensity of officers who had arrived to protect someone he had threatened. This is an ICE matter. This is a federal judge. Step away. We're verifying her identity. Her identity is verified. She's Judge Diane Whitmore, Eastern District of Michigan, 7th floor. I've provided security for her courtroom for 6 years. Reyes approached with the measured pace of someone who intended to take control and expected no resistance. You have a federal judge in handcuffs. On the sidewalk outside her own courthouse. Explain that. She fit the description. What description? Black woman? Professional attire? That's Judge Whitmore. That's what she looks like every day she comes to work. We couldn't verify. You didn't try to verify. You have a courthouse 50 feet away. You have a woman showing you judicial credentials. You have clerks and attorneys identifying her. You had everything you needed. She stopped directly in front of Gallagher. Uncuff her. Now. I need to confirm with my supervisor. Your supervisor is not superior to a United States District Judge. I am a Deputy United States Marshal. I am ordering you to release Judge Whitmore immediately. If you refuse, I will place you under arrest for obstruction of justice and interference with a federal judicial officer. Gallagher's face had gone pale. His partner had backed away entirely, the posture of someone trying to create distance from a catastrophe. Now, agent. Uncuff her. Gallagher's hands trembled as he produced the key. He approached Judge Whitmore, who had stood motionless throughout the exchange, observing everything with the detached assessment of someone already composing a judicial opinion. The handcuffs clicked open. Judge Whitmore brought her arms forward. She rubbed her wrists, the same gesture that every wrongfully detained person made. The marks were visible, red lines where the metal had pressed too tight. Thank you, Deputy Reyes. Your Honor, I apologize. This should never have happened. It shouldn't have, but it did. And now it needs to be documented, investigated, and prosecuted. She looked at Gallagher. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you exercise it. Because everything you've said has been recorded, and everything you say from this point forward will be used against you in the federal case that I will be recused from, but that my colleagues will handle with the same attention to justice that I would. The Honorable Harold Washington had served as Chief Judge of the Eastern District of Michigan for 7 years. He had overseen hundreds of cases, managed dozens of judges, and navigated every political and administrative challenge the federal judiciary could produce. He had never walked out of his courthouse to find a colleague in handcuffs. He emerged through the main entrance at 8:39 a.m., 19 minutes before Judge Whitmore's hearing was scheduled to begin. His own robe was already on. His own docket was waiting. But this took precedence. "Diane." "Harold, are you injured?" "My pride is injured. My wrists are marked. My faith in certain federal agencies is diminished." She managed a thin smile. The humor of someone processing absurdity through the only mechanism available. Chief Judge Washington turned to Gallagher with an expression that had sentenced violent criminals to decades in prison. "You detained Judge Whitmore." "Sir, I was conducting enforcement operations." "You detained a federal judge." "On the sidewalk outside her courthouse. On her way to preside over a hearing." "I didn't know." "You didn't ask." "She showed you credentials. She showed you her robe. She offered verification. She told you exactly who she was." Anyone can claim. A federal judge claimed to be a federal judge. That should have triggered verification, not detention. He stepped closer to Gallagher, close enough that the body cam captured every detail of his expression. "Do you know what she was coming to do this morning?" "She was coming to preside over an immigration case. An asylum seeker from Guatemala. The kind of case your agency claims to care about." He gestured to Judge Whitmore. "This woman has spent 14 years adjudicating cases that affect your mission. She has ruled fairly, by the law, according to the Constitution. And you handcuffed her for walking to work." "Sir, I'm not finished. Judge Whitmore's family has been in Michigan for 5 generations. Her great-great-grandfather escaped slavery and settled in Detroit in 1859. She was appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. She has lifetime tenure under Article 3 of the Constitution." He paused. "And you asked her for proof of citizenship." Gallagher had no response. "You're going to be investigated. By the FBI. By the Department of Justice. By ICE's own internal affairs. And when that investigation is complete, you're going to face federal charges for deprivation of rights under color of law." You were just following your prejudices. You saw a black woman and decided she didn't belong near a federal building. You ignored every piece of evidence that contradicted your assumption. Chief Judge Washington turned back to Judge Whitmore. "Diane, your hearing is in 17 minutes. Can you proceed?" "I can proceed. The asylum seeker in my courtroom deserves justice. That hasn't changed. Your clerks are waiting. Deputy Reyes will escort you inside." "Thank you, Harold." She gathered her tote bag, the robe still inside, the credentials still inside, everything that should have prevented this encounter still present and still ignored. She looked at Gallagher one final time. "I've presided over civil rights cases for 14 years. I've seen body cam footage of unlawful stops. I've heard officers explain their reasonable suspicion. I've issued rulings that held law enforcement accountable." She held up her wrists, where the handcuff marks remained visible. "I never expected to be the plaintiff." She walked toward the courthouse, the building she had entered thousands of times, the entrance that had been blocked by prejudice for 23 minutes, the courtroom that waited for her on the 7th floor. The doors opened. She walked through. And 17 minutes later, the Honorable Diane Elizabeth Whitmore took the bench to hear an immigration case. Her wrists still marked, her dignity intact, her commitment to justice unchanged. The investigation moved with the velocity reserved for cases involving the federal judiciary. FBI Civil Rights Division. Department of Justice Office of Professional Responsibility. ICE Office of Inspector General. 3 parallel inquiries examining the same incident from different angles. The body cam footage was secured first. Both agents' recordings. The courthouse security cameras. The cell phone videos from at least 12 witnesses. Every angle documented. But the footage only revealed the incident. The investigation revealed the pattern. Agent Ryan Gallagher had accumulated 14 complaints in 8 years. Discriminatory conduct, harassment, pretextual stops, failure to follow verification protocols. 11 had been dismissed through internal review. 3 had resulted in written reprimands. The pattern was visible in the data. His enforcement operations consistently targeted black professionals near government buildings, federal courthouses, state offices, municipal facilities, the places where black people in professional attire apparently constituted suspicious activity. 26 prior stops over 5 years. 23 involved black individuals. 0 had resulted in any immigration enforcement action. Every one had been released after verification proved exactly what the individuals had claimed from the start. His social media accounts completed the picture. Posts mocking diversity judges and affirmative action appointments. Comments about certain people infiltrating government positions. Membership in online groups where officers shared strategies for identifying suspicious professionals. Text messages to fellow agents revealed the ideology beneath the conduct. Got another one near the federal building. Fancy suit, thought she was important. These people think a law degree makes them American. Easy targets near the courthouse. They always have a story about why they belong. The irony was toxic. Gallagher had targeted the very people who administered the justice system he claimed to serve. His partner, Agent Luis Mendez, was interviewed separately. His cooperation would determine whether he faced charges or merely termination. Did you believe Judge Whitmore's credentials were legitimate? I had doubts about the stop from the beginning. Did you express those doubts? I suggested we verify. Ryan refused. When the marshals arrived and confirmed her identity, what went through your mind? Silence. Agent Mendez? I knew Ryan had made a terrible mistake. I knew he had made similar mistakes before. I should have stopped it. The investigation expanded beyond the single incident. ICE's enforcement patterns near federal buildings. The complaint histories of agents like Gallagher. The systemic failure to address documented bias. Judge Whitmore provided testimony over 2 days. She described the encounter with the precision that 14 years of judicial writing had honed. Every word, every gesture, every moment that had transformed an ordinary morning into a constitutional crisis. I've spent my career believing in the rule of law, she stated in her deposition. I've believed that the system, despite its flaws, ultimately delivers justice. Being handcuffed on the sidewalk outside my own courthouse tested that belief in ways I never anticipated. The federal grand jury convened 6 weeks after the incident. The charges, deprivation of rights under color of law, false imprisonment, civil rights violations, interference with a federal judicial officer. The final charge was rare, reserved for cases where someone had obstructed the functioning of the federal judiciary itself. Gallagher had done exactly that. His 23-minute detention had delayed a federal hearing. His actions had interfered with constitutional duties. The grand jury returned indictments on all counts. The trial was scheduled for federal court in the Eastern District of Michigan, Judge Whitmore's own district, though she would obviously be recused. Her colleagues would handle the case. They would handle it well. The federal courtroom in Detroit drew national attention. A federal judge detained for walking to work. The case had become a symbol of everything wrong with pretextual enforcement. Judge Whitmore testified on the second day. She wore the same professional attire she had worn the morning of the incident. She carried the same tote bag. The judicial robe was inside. The same robe Gallagher had dismissed as anyone can buy online. On October 22nd, I was walking to work. The same route I've walked for 14 years. The same courthouse I've served since my appointment. What happened? Agent Gallagher stepped into my path and demanded proof of citizenship. Did you provide identification? I showed him my judicial credentials. He dismissed them as possibly fake. I showed him my robe. He dismissed it as something anyone could buy. I offered verification through the courthouse, through the marshals, through any channel he chose. He refused everything. What happened then? He handcuffed me, 50 feet from my own courthouse, 34 minutes before my hearing. The Bodycam footage was played for the jury. They watched Gallagher approach. They watched the credentials dismissed. They watched the robe dismissed. They watched the handcuffs applied while Judge Whitmore maintained the composure that 14 years on the bench had made instinctive. Your Honor, what was going through your mind when you were handcuffed? I was thinking about my great-great-grandfather, Samuel Whitmore. He escaped slavery in 1859 and came to Michigan on the Underground Railroad. He built a life here. 5 generations of my family have called this state home. She paused, and I was standing in handcuffs, being asked to prove I belonged in a country my family helped build. Her colleagues from the bench testified about her reputation. Fair, thorough, The kind of judge that lawyers respected even when they lost. The chief judge testified about receiving the call, about walking outside to find her in handcuffs, about the particular horror of seeing a colleague, a friend, treated like a suspect. Judge Whitmore has served the federal judiciary with distinction for 14 years. She has handled some of the most difficult cases in our district. She has done so with integrity, with fairness, with unwavering commitment to the rule of law. He looked at Gallagher, and this agent looked at her and saw nothing but the color of her skin. The defense attempted the standard arguments. Good faith. Following training. No way to know. The prosecutor's rebuttal was devastating. No way to know. She showed him judicial credentials. She showed him a federal robe. She pointed at the courthouse where she works. Clerks identified her. Attorneys identified her. Everyone knew except the agent who had already decided what he was looking at. She displayed his stop records. 26 stops. 23 black individuals. 0 enforcement actions. This wasn't immigration enforcement. This was harassment. And Judge Whitmore was victim 24. The first one who happened to be a federal judge. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Gallagher sat motionless as the verdicts were read. His 8-year federal career had ended on a sidewalk 50 feet from a courthouse, undone by prejudice that he had carried into every encounter for years. Judge Whitmore watched from the gallery. The same composed expression she had maintained throughout the incident. The same dignity that handcuffs couldn't diminish. Justice had been delivered. By her colleagues. In her courthouse. Exactly as it should be. The sentencing hearing brought closure that the trial had only begun. Agent Gallagher, you were entrusted with federal authority. You used that authority to harass, detain, and humiliate a sitting federal judge. Not because of anything she had done, but because of what she looked like. The judge presiding, the Honorable Marcus Thompson, senior judge of the Eastern District, reviewed the pre-sentencing materials with visible contempt. Your pattern of conduct spans years. Your targeting was systematic. Your dismissal of credentials was willful. And your victim was a colleague of this court, a woman who has devoted her life to the law you claim to serve. The sentence, 6 years federal prison. Enhanced for targeting a federal judicial officer. Enhanced for interference with federal court proceedings. Enhanced for the documented pattern of civil rights violations. Gallagher was led from the courtroom in handcuffs, the same restraints he had applied to Judge Whitmore on a sidewalk 7 months earlier. The civil settlement followed within 3 months. The Department of Homeland Security agreed to pay $10 million rather than face a trial that would expose systemic failures across multiple field offices. Judge Whitmore directed the distribution of funds with the same precision she applied to legal opinions. For $1 million to establish scholarships for minority law students, ensuring that the next generation of judges would look like the communities they served. $3 million to civil rights organizations focused on immigration enforcement accountability, funding the oversight that should have caught Gallagher years earlier. $2 million to the Detroit chapter of the NAACP, continuing the work that her great-great-grandfather had supported when he settled in the city 165 years ago. The remaining funds established the Samuel Whitmore Justice Fund, providing legal representation to individuals facing pretextual enforcement stops. ICE entered a consent decree in Michigan requiring enhanced oversight of operations near federal buildings. Mandatory verification protocols. Civilian review of stop patterns. The systems that had allowed Gallagher to operate for 8 years would finally face scrutiny. Agent Mendez was terminated but not prosecuted. His cooperation had been valuable. His remorse appeared genuine. His failure had been passive rather than active. Judge Whitmore returned to her courtroom the same morning she was released from handcuffs. The asylum case proceeded. The Guatemalan woman received a fair hearing. The law was applied as written. That was the point. That had always been the point. She still walks the same route to work. Same sidewalk. Same entrance. Same courthouse she has served for 14 years. The security officers still greet her by name. The clerks still know her schedule. The other judges still respect her reputation. But something has changed. The story is known now. The incident is documented. The lesson is taught in law schools and training academies. A federal judge was handcuffed for walking to work. She was asked to prove she belonged in her own courthouse. She was detained by an agent who couldn't see past her skin color to the credentials she carried, the robe in her bag, the authority she embodied. The agent is in federal prison. The judge is still on the bench. 5 generations of Whitmores have called Michigan home. 5 generations have contributed to a country that hasn't always recognized their contributions. Samuel Whitmore escaped slavery and found freedom in Detroit. His great-great-granddaughter found justice in the same city, delivering it from the bench, receiving it when she needed it, ensuring it continues for generations to come. The courthouse still rises above Lafayette Boulevard. The flag still waves above the entrance. And the Honorable Diane Elizabeth Whitmore still walks through those doors every morning. Her robe in her bag, her credentials in her pocket, her dignity undiminished by handcuffs that never should have touched her wrists. 14 years on the bench. $10 million in accountability. One lesson for anyone who still hasn't learned it. Some people you don't detain. Some credentials you don't dismiss. Some judges you don't underestimate.
Each document holds a secret. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to keep unlocking the vault.